Christian Parenting.
Hey guys, welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast.
Good to be here. Thanks, Steph.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Steph.
I'm very excited for this conversation. I already told you I have a million questions written down talking all about youth sports and all the things. And so I want to jump into it, but first we have to get to know you guys a little bit. So I don't know who wants to go first, but if you want to just tell us a little about yourselves, what you do, about your families, where you are, the important things.
Go ahead, Ed.
Okay, well, my name is Ed Uszynski, and I've worked with Athletes in Action for 33 years, which is a sports ministry to college and professional athletes. My wife, Amy, and I live just outside of Dayton, Ohio. And what we just found out is Amy's actually, well, we didn't just find this out, but Amy's from Eden Prairie, which is your neck of the woods. So
Yep.
we did just make that connection. We have 4 kids, ages 24, 22, 20, and 14. So we've got 3 in college and 1 that's about to be in 9th grade. They've all played sports at all different levels. And I've coached and parented and ministered in this sports space for just my whole life now. So that's kind of what brings me to the table in the first place.
Yeah, I love that.
Yep, I am
Go ahead.
Brian Smith, and you can almost just like copy and paste Ed's stuff for me. I'm just about 10 to 15 years behind and everything. So I've been on staff for 17 years, married, 3 kids, have a freshman, 8th grader, and a 5th grader. They play all of the sports combined. I have coached as well from the collegiate level all the way down to 3rd grade rec league. So I've seen it all through coaching, through parenting, but also as a sports minister for 17 years with Athletes in Action.
Yeah. Okay, so besides talking about how small of a world Minnesota is, before we started recording, we were talking a little bit kind of about why I think this conversation is important. And that's that there are a lot of varying opinions on youth sports, whether parents want to be in them or they think they're too much, or their whole entire life is wrapped up in youth sports and it's all they can talk about and think about. There's just like a lot. There's a large spectrum. And I think it's something that everybody thinks about on the regular. So what do you guys see from your experience as dads and in the professional world? What do you see going on in youth sports? Like, what are some of the themes that you're seeing or experiencing?
Yeah. Well, I'll start just by saying part of the reason why we wrote the book is that we were feeling all those same things, even as former athletes and people that work in the sports world. It really is, the youth sports world is an industry now. It's a massive multi-billion-dollar industry that has a value system and is super expensive and wants to take all your time. And just like any business, when lots of people start getting involved in the business, they keep coming up with new ways to take more time and spend more money. And what we were really feeling, even as we were a part of it ourselves, is that kids' interest. I mean, youth sports is really supposed to be about the kids being able to play a game. And when they turn into commodities and the game turns into an industry, then one of the consequences is going to be that their best interest is probably lower on the list for the people that are running things. So both Brian and I, and again, I'll stop with that and let Brian take the baton, but both Brian and I just said, okay, how do we get off the merry-go-round, even as we're a part of it? And as Christian parents, ask, how can we actually help our kids follow Jesus in the midst of that? I mean, that's really where we were going to.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we decided to be on this team or that team, or how much is too much, or which days are we going to commit to, and all this. I mean, that's going to look different for everybody. But if we're going to be involved in it, how do we live in a more Christian way as we walk alongside our kids and journey with them, even as we're being affected by the system? How do we recognize what's happening to us so that we can help our kids?
Yeah, and why does any of that matter? It's Romans 12. Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so for us as Christian parents, we need to be aware of what we have kind of pegged the youth sports industrial complex. We need to be aware of how it is discipling us as parents and also discipling our kids, because if we're giving large amounts of our time, energy, and money to this system, we need to do it with wide eyes and know what this system is intending to do with us and our kids. And it's really, they're trying to win and they're trying to make money, the system is. And so all that to say, what we're not arguing for is to just like run away and form our own separate Christian clubs and huddle together. We're trying to help parents see that there is a way forward where you can still exist within a broken system, that something created by God to be good, has been broken and twisted, we can still exist in this system and move forward and do so in ways that are different from the rest of the world. But a lot of times we just don't think creatively enough to and wonder, what does that actually look like? Because the Bible's not going to tell us directly how do you deal with youth sports in 2025. And so we need to do some creative thinking there. And that's what we're trying to do in this book, is just help bring the Bible, God's word, to bear on this current moment in youth sports and say, how do we live faithfully in this system?
Right. And I think it would be so easy and it's so tempting sometimes to just be like, let's just quit it all. Like, let's not do the sports. Let's like go against culture and just say we're not going to be a part of it. But I just don't think that's the reality for that many people. I mean, I think I've mentioned on this podcast before, like both my sons, their main sport is baseball. We also have some basketball in there, some football, some karate. My daughter dances, which is like a one sport thing, but to be a dancer, you have to be a gymnast now too. Our family, we are like right in the sports mode. So I come at this conversation curious and needing help as much as, I mean, anyone else. So it's not like I know what, what is best here. So I have so many questions. And I think one of the main ones is kind of, you touched on this a little bit, but like getting to the parents' heart behind it too, because parents put a lot of pressure on their kids. Maybe they're like living through them a little bit. Maybe they're getting a little more into it, pushing harder than their kids are ready for. How do you think there's like warning signs if you're a parent that you should be looking for where this is a little, my thinking's disordered here, or my identity is wrapped up in my kid's sports? Like, what can we be looking for to keep us level?
Yeah, I would start by saying, and Ed would agree with this too, we really do believe most parents, Christian parents, are well intentioned when it comes to youth sports. And so this isn't meant to shame anybody. We have made all of the mistakes that we talk about in the book that we should not make. And so to say like we get it. I think one of the things that I'm looking out for in my own heart when I'm in the youth sports space is, am I responding not just in my heart, but through audible words to other people? Am I responding in ways that are inconsistent with not just my own family values, but my Christian values as well? And so when I'm driving home in the car, I'm processing what came out of my mouth, what was my heart posture like during times, and I'm able to see the disconnect oftentimes between how I acted in that environment and the faith I claim to hold. And so I think that's one thing we can do, is just kind of do a self-analysis after the game to see, yeah, was I representing Jesus well in that space today, and then to give ourselves grace and try to do it better the next time.
One of the things that Brian and I have talked about for years is just how much the fear of an imagined future winds up affecting what we're doing and how we're operating today on the way to practice or after practice or the games or whatever. That we're afraid that our kids are going to miss out. We're afraid they're not going to make the high school team, we're afraid they're not going to get a college scholarship. I mean, I still think that very much influences people's thinking. They don't want to talk about it maybe, but they really still believe they're going to be part of that 2% of kids that wind up playing college. And so everything that we do today and every performance today matters for tomorrow. And the system, again, we'll call it a system, a complex, is actually taking advantage of those fears and is feeding them and is saying, if you're not here today when he's 10, he's going to be missing out on making the team when he's 18 or 14. If she doesn't show up year round in this sport with our club, she's already going to be behind by next year. And so, of course, as parents, even if we know we're being manipulated, it taps into inner fears that we have, that we don't want them to miss out. And when everybody else is doing it, we feel like we better do it too, or we're going to regret it. So to become more aware of that, and to become more aware of how much my identity is tied to my child's performance, that if I'm intensely embarrassed, it's natural to feel some kind of negative way when bad things happen. But if I'm like so deeply embarrassed that I feel like I need to do perception management in the stands when my kid messes up, or if on the other hand, when they do well, I start to feel like I'm somehow superior to everybody else in the stands. And again, nobody would necessarily see that or know that except for me. That's when I'm starting to go over a line that maybe this is not healthy, because it's really our kids' athletic journey. It's not really supposed to be about us.
Right. Right.
But it winds up being a lot about us.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for like walking yourself away from that, or like talking yourself down, because I feel that with myself, getting caught up with, oh my gosh, we got to get the batting average up, we should take him to the batting cages, or we should go do pitching lessons, or he's really has so much potential to be a great catcher, let's do extra training and let's go to all the acro. Like there's so many things you can add because it's an industry, and I have to constantly talk myself down and be like, chill out for a minute. So David, like, how do I keep doing that?
Yeah, we do. And again, we've struggled with this ourselves too. So you're not at all alone. You're in a minority of people that will say it out loud and ask for help. Again, Brian and I have been doing that with ourselves and with other people around us for years now. Brian, what would you say to that first?
I was going to say exactly what you said. The beginning part is to question, is this the right thing to do or not? And just follow the crowd on whatever everybody else is doing. I wonder, and Ed, we haven't talked about this before, but when faced with those circumstances, how helpful might it be to talk to somebody who has actually made it? And I put made it in quotes, of like somebody who's made it to college or made it to the pros, and just ask what their journey was like and what they did and didn't do, and maybe use that as a pathway to making wise decisions. Again, if your kid is on that path, who knows, maybe your kid's batting 200 and all the training isn't going to matter for them to make it to the next level. But if they do have potential, what does somebody who's actually made it, what would they advise, instead of these club teams that are going to be directly benefiting from it? So I think there is wisdom in asking somebody who has no financial ties or gets no financial benefit from you, and just say, hey, what would you recommend in this space?
So, Steph, can we tell you what we've heard as we've asked that question of people?
I would love to know that.
Have interacted with college and professional athletes literally across decades. What they will say to us is, if your kid makes it as a college athlete, it's not primarily going to be because of you and choices that you're making as a parent. If they make it as a college athlete, it's going to be because God has given them a level of skill, natural ability, a body, an ability to move through space that's different than 99% of all the other kids they're playing with. And maybe even more importantly, he's going to give him or her a drive, an inner drive to do things that are different than all the other kids. You can't force that. You can't nag that into him or her. I'm still struggling with it myself. I mean, I could tell you stories even from this week where I'm feeling it with my freshman, where I want him to be something other than what he is at this moment. Even as I'm on podcasts and have just written a book about it, I want him to be something different than what he is in the way he approaches sport. I want him to be more driven by it. And he's not. That might change. It may never change. He may not want to play anything in another year. And so can I just, in a sense, respond and let them drive the bus? Brian's been talking about this a lot the last couple of years, is what does it look like to let our kids be more in control of telling us what they want to do when it comes to sport, and then take that seriously and not try to add anything to it. So if our kids really just want to play and they aren't interested in getting better the way we want them to, or excelling or becoming a better catcher or whatever, can I be okay with that? And a lot of times the answer is no. And so then it becomes, okay, then let's stop talking to the kids and let's get counseling. Like, why am I not okay with that? Seriously.
Yeah. Well, I think that applies to more than just sports too, right? Like, that can be school or like career choices. That can be a lot of things.
Especially when you live in an environment like we just talked about, Steph, where you're in a very competitive school system, and the people are maybe much more upwardly mobile, and there's an expectation of excellence and the pursuit of climbing the ladder. When that's already the water that you're swimming in, with your neighbors and at the school, it's really hard to separate ourselves from that and say, I'm not going to do that to my kid.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it to him.
Yeah.
Unless they're begging for it, though, right, Ed? Like, unless the kid is driving the process and they're saying, Mom, Dad, I really want to fix my swing. I think I need somebody to help with that.
Yeah, I want more. Then you do it for sure. But
if it's us coming to them and saying, hey, we're thinking about getting you this, and this, can we fit this in? That's where I would just say we might need to pause a little bit and ask what they really want in the process, because they might just want a break and to spend a few months hanging out with their friends.
Yeah.
Well, and We spend so much time on their performance, their athletic performance, and we probably don't give enough time to thinking about their life, and specifically their life as a Jesus follower. How do we, that's the whole point of kind of why we wrote this book. How do we're not saying that winning, we don't care about winning. We're not saying that we don't want to pursue excellence. Of course we do. If we're participating, let's push them to be the best they can be in the space that they're in. I'm still all for that, the best that they want to be. But what's way more important is, am I helping them to grow in character? Am I helping them to think about Christian categories and what it means to be loving and what it means to persist and what it means to be humble, and these things that actually will make a huge difference when they're 30, if we've taught them to live well right now when they're 13. But how many times my son takes a called strike 3 and just, never guards the outside corner, and that's the thing that's actually driving me crazy, and I'm spending all my time and attention and money on trying to fix that in them, instead of why they don't go through the handshake line in a way that gives dignity to other people after the game when they lose.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably way more important and probably not what we're giving enough attention to.
Yeah. And there's so much of a balance too. I feel like I heard on a podcast once people saying, sign your kids up for all the extras. That makes sense for your family if they ask. But if they don't ask, don't do anything because they don't care. And I was like, that's probably true. So we've kind of followed that. And I have to hold my daughter back from everything. I mean, she wants to be dancing 7 days a week and do all the things. And at a certain point, I'm like, you're 9 years old. And if you dance Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're going to miss all your birthday parties. And that's more important right now than your sports, and building up character and learning that sometimes you have to wait to do the things that you want to do. Like you just have to wait a few years to do 12 dances. Like that just, you don't get to do everything you want to do right now. And I think part of that is some of what youth sports used to be and is supposed to be is character building and, developing relationships with peers and learning how to be competitive. And that is what we kind of lose focus on when it's so much about rising to the top.
Yeah, and it makes sense that we would lose focus and make this shift from what youth sports used to be to what it is today, because the people at the top who are selling us this that's what they're selling is your kid, if you enter into the system, is going to make it and be that 2%. If you just sign up for this next class, this next team, this next league. And so they're putting us on this, really it's a discipleship journey where the end goal is your kid needs to be a winner, an end product, elite, whatever you want to do. And so that's our only experience when it comes to youth sports, is what is being fed to us from other people. So it's unfortunate, but it also makes sense because that's the only vision we're seeing these days, is not the sandlot backyard sports that we used to see growing up. We're just now seeing the Instagram, Twitter, Facebook leagues where you're just getting the highlights of these kids who are 8 years old and are ridiculously good. And we're comparing our kid who seems way, way far behind to that. And like Ed said, it puts us in this fear mode where it's like, man, we got a lot of catching up to do. So what do we need to do to get there?
It's good, Brian. And there's a huge emphasis on specialization at super early ages. And so, Steph, you even made me think of this when you were saying your daughter wants to dance all the time, which is great. Like, that's super fun that she wants to do that and she's all into it. But I think what's going through my mind is, as a parent, I have some responsibility to help steward her not overusing her body and muscles. So again, this is what you find out when you talk to people who are already 10 years down the road, that specialization too early in any sport where we're overusing certain muscles and underusing other ones is not good for us as athletes. So it really is good, even at a young age, to stay involved in lots of different things. But then too, just to be well-rounded, to I love what you just said about go to birthday parties, because you're only going to get a few chances relative to your whole life to go to those and enjoy them. Yeah. There's going to be a million chances to dance, again, as this continues to be a part of her life, and using that example. How do I steward knowing what I know to help them be well-rounded and not to specialize too quickly? And again, like Brian just said, the sport complex is not about that at all. We want you to specialize now, and we're not interested in you being well-rounded at all. We want you to focus on this, and we want you to pay money and show up at our stuff. And that's what we're saying at the beginning. That's not what's best for kids necessarily. It's
and
just
the research would say that too, but from from a Christian perspective, there's the whole like your body is a temple for the Holy Spirit. So we haven't talked about that at either, but there is this aspect of like maybe helping our kids be more rounded physically could actually be winsome in a Christian sense and helping develop more holistic the different muscles that might be underdeveloped in other sports. Like if we're just doing soccer year round, studies are showing that you're going to see more ACL tears. And so yeah, you can use data and general wisdom, but there is a Christian element to that too of like, man, if God has gifted us with these bodies and we're supposed to take care of them, it seems like it would make sense to develop them more holistically than just specializing, especially early on before they fully developed.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about the Christian faith and how, I mean, everyone listening to this podcast, they're listening because they want to be stronger Christian parents and to raise their kids to follow Jesus. So, how can we, knowing that this is the reality of sports today and there's only so much we can do to change that, and we're going to be living in it, how can Christian parents integrate scripture and prayer and their identity in Christ, like into sports, helping their kids to understand that that's the most important thing and that's who they are more than a baseball player? Like you're a Christian who plays baseball before you're just a baseball player.
Yeah. Well, that's what the whole book is about and more. Again, Brian and I continue to talk because the book's not the final word on all of it, but it's at least going to open up discussions for parents in very practical ways on how to do that. One of the things that I would put on the table first is just what our overall attitude maybe needs to be first when it comes to sports, that we don't need to view it as an enemy. Again, you feel torn in different directions. I don't need to view it as an enemy. I also shouldn't go all in on everything that's being offered. Like those two extremes are not healthy. How do I live in the middle of it? And we say we're really trying to model what Daniel did in the Bible, where Daniel's living in this completely pagan Babylon that's got completely different values from him and his God-fearing friends. And he doesn't try to change Babylon. He doesn't try to lead a coup against it, nor does he completely separate himself from it and get completely detached, but he's involved in it. And he does it in a way that says, how can we follow God in a faithful way right in the midst of this as it's going on? And that may seem so obvious to everybody, but again, it takes a lot of inner work for me to think about that every day before we go to practice or a game, or I want to say something to the one son that's still at home. I need to think about like, what is my posture going to be towards this whole thing, and how do I help him to see a bigger picture than just what's right in front of us right now? So that's a starting point. Brian, what would you say that maybe is even more practical?
Yeah, we've been using language like what we celebrate, our kids will replicate. So what we celebrate, our kids will replicate. And so if when our kids are done with practice or a game, and at some point when we're processing how things went, if they're consistently hearing us talk about their performance and celebrating the good hit or the good catch or the good shot, what are they going to think that they need to do to get affirmation and affection and love from us as parents? Well, I gotta make sure I keep getting the good hit or the good catch or the good shot, because I know that when I do those things, they seem to be excited. So we need to change what we're excited about if we really are trying to use sports to build Christian character in our kids and leverage the amazing moments that sports provide. Like the ultimate highs and the lowest of lows are all incredible discipleship opportunities. We need to make sure that when we're processing what we're seeing with them on the field or on the court, the pool, we're saying things like paying attention to who they're spending time with. Like, I noticed you with the kid at the end of the bench today. Keep that up. That's such a great reflection of Jesus when you include other people. Or, hey, I saw you today when your teammate struck out and you went up and you just patted him on the back. Buddy, most people would just ignore them or even gossip behind their back, but you didn't. And on the flip side, if they're ignoring these kids, then it's still an opportunity to say, hey, when they struck out today, I don't know if you noticed, but everybody ignored them. What do you think it would look like at practice or the next game, next time somebody strikes out, for you to actually go up and encourage them? And so for them to begin to see like, oh man, mom and dad, and they're starting to pay attention to things beyond just the earthly metrics and the things that are reflected on the score sheet or the scoreboard. And I think that once our kids start to recognize that what we care about is more than just the stats and the scores, hopefully they'll begin living in ways that reflect that too. And that's what the book's about, is helping. How do we recognize those moments and how do we enter into it in a way that's not super cheesy or awkward.
Yeah. I think the more you do it and the more you talk about it, the less cheesy and awkward it becomes too, right? Like it
Hopefully,
might
right?
feel uncomfortable the first time, but
For
I think
sure.
we all have a million uncomfortable conversations with our kids and we figure it out because
Add
we have
this,
to.
add
Yeah.
this to
Add this to the pile. Yeah. And it's probably the better one to have. So I kind of want to, one more thing to think about as we're talking is I feel like a lot of people struggle with Wednesday nights used to not be sports nights because it was youth group night. And Sunday mornings, some sports are really good at not having Sunday morning things, some are not. Like, how can families balance all of that, reclaim their own family rhythms, their own importance of going to church or youth group, but also they're in sports?
Yeah. And Brian and I have been kicking this around a lot lately too, just even how we want to talk about this. So I'll put
Well,
this on.
and before Ed, you go, I would just say this is an entire podcast. It was an entire chapter in the book that didn't make it, that we're working on revamping. And so even in the next 3 minutes, it's such a nuanced and complex conversation. We probably won't get to all of it. So Ed, just to set you up with that, like there's a lot of factors that go into a conversation like this.
So that's good, Brian. I'll put two extremes on the table to start. One, it really is okay to say you're not going to play sports on Sunday. I know that sounds really antiquated. We know that leagues and everybody's scheduling things like crazy, especially the last 10 years. That's just a norm now. If you don't want to play on Sunday, that is a legitimate option. And coaches, if you tell them that ahead of time, will respect that, even though they're putting tons of pressure on and, will put different threats down or whatever. If you just say up front, we're not going to show up before noon, let's say on Sundays or, whatever, they will usually respect that. But whether they do or don't, you still have permission and the right to say we're not going to participate on Sundays. So I just feel like we need to put that out there. At the other end of the spectrum, and Brian and I have been saying this pretty consistently, we believe that we should have a consistent rhythm to gathering with the people of God at church across our lives. Okay, so we're very intentionally about what we're saying, a consistent rhythm of gathering at church across our lives. And so we, especially since COVID, a lot of people have just completely checked out on gathering together with other Christians in what we call church. And we think that's not healthy for our kids as Christians. That's not a good idea. Now, there's all kinds of different nuances in between those two extremes, but we're saying it's okay to say you're not going to show up to play at games if you don't want to on Sunday. And we think that you really should be trying to figure out how to be in church, okay? That we will put that on the table, but that's going to look different for everybody. Brian, I just gave you some time to think about what else you want to say about that. So what else can that look like? What have we said to each other, Brian, about what else that can look like?
Yeah, we've talked through categories of like if you're going to miss it, what makes it, not that it needs to be made okay, but what ways could you stand right before yourself, your family, and before God to say like, we missed it, but so if you actually take up the posture of we're using this to be missional, if you're taking seriously the Second Corinthians, you have been reconciled to God, so you've been given the ministry of reconciliation, which means, hey, you are, whether you want it or not, you are a sports missionary. If you are a Christian and your kid is in sports, you are a sports missionary. And so if you're missing church for sports, are you actually embodying Jesus while you're on the field? Are you, not that you need to like be handing out tracts and sharing the gospel with everybody.
But what does that mean, Brian? And we talk about that. It means taking an interest beyond the surface of the other parents. It means not
It
feeling like
means learning their names,
yes,
striking up a conversation, showing that you're not there with your phone just staring at your kid the entire time so you can talk to them afterwards, but you're there to be missional. You're there to be a person who's showing interest in other people's lives. And again, you don't need to give them a full gospel presentation, but do other people feel seen by you? So I would say that we've used this too of like, man, if Chick-fil-A can build an entire food empire and not be open on Sunday, and God somehow is blessing that, it is not out of the realm to think you sticking to your guns and attending church on Sunday and making that a sacred space for you. Not that we can trick or manipulate God, but we need to trust if we are prioritizing him, all will be well. He will take care of us in whatever ways he needs to. And maybe that's our kid becoming a star. Maybe it's our kid learning more what it looks like to follow Jesus. But there is something to saying, Yeah, I'm gonna put my Christian values above the sports complex values, even if it costs us something, which is
Well,
tough. Even saying that, I realize that's tough for a lot of families.
we've said too that we want to ask, what are we missing by not being present on a Sunday, let's say? If that's really the only time that our kids and we are being fed spiritually, that's probably already a problem. Okay, again, that's a
Yeah.
longer conversation, but that's probably already a problem if all of our eggs are in that little 2 hour window basket as far as our spiritual input. So that would be one thing to talk about. But what are how do we how do we continue to fill in? Okay, so we're going to miss the sermon. Is there some way that we could still listen to a sermon as we're driving or coming back? We were just talking to a group of youth pastors yesterday who said, what if we were able to curate when we know that people are playing in these different cities around the area? What if we curated other churches for people to be able to go to visit when they are in other cities? Some people want to do that. I've known dads that actually were taking their kids to church when they would drive 3 hours to a soccer tournament in northern Ohio, and I would come to find out they actually went to church service because they just wanted to expose their kids to a different environment, and they wanted to show that this is still what we do. We're going to get with a body of people on the weekends, or curate a list of a podcast to listen to or messages to listen to, so that we're saying this is still a value. We just took it on the road with us. You're not going to communion in the car necessarily, but to think creatively about how to continue to feed your family spiritually, even if you miss being in a particular building on a Sunday morning.
Well, I think that's just so much to think about. And I love so many days, those ideas, because the reality is we are going to miss church with our families, whether it's for sports or a vacation or
Right.
whatever, like it's just going to happen. And it's just, how much are you willing to do? How much is it being a detriment to your faith and your child's faith? And then and is that it? Because if that's what you're relying on, to your point, that's a bigger discussion as well, too. So it's
Steph,
supposed
we
to be
need to
part of your life, not all of it.
That's right. Part, but not all. I love how you said that. And we need to take the initiative as parents before we sign up for the team. And again, I've made this mistake too many times, to actually ask, how many tournaments are we going to play and where are they going to be? And let's really look at the schedule. And if you've got 3 kids that are playing different sports, as mom and dad, let's sit down and look at what this is really going to mean for us, and how much is too much. Every family is going to have to decide that for themselves.
Yeah.
Most of the time, we don't even know that it's going to happen until after it already happens. And then we look back and say, why in the world did we let that happen?
Yeah. There was one weekend this year, we had my daughter's dance recitals, which there are 6 of them. And my husband, Trevor, was in them with her because he did the dads and daughters dance. And then both our boys were at separate baseball tournaments, like 2 hours away from each other. And that was our one crazy, it was insanity. Most weekends aren't like that. But we just kind of joked with our oldest. We're like, getting in an Uber, figure it out. We sent him with a friend. We did not send him in an Uber, to be clear. But it was our running joke of just figure it out.
We've done the same thing, and sometimes you can't help it. But again, I think we're encouraging ourselves as parents to be more intentional and more thoughtful about what's actually happening. Again, not to condemn ourselves, but just so that we can be better stewards of our own lives and the lives of our kids.
Yeah. Do you guys have any final encouragement for parents before we go?
We've been saying from the start that we hope that people will read this book in community with other people. The point of the book is that we would really see what's going on the field and use that as a discipleship opportunity. But that works it works a lot better when you're doing that in community with other people, where there's accountability and you can cheer each other on and do exactly what we're doing right now and share ideas. And this is what's working for us and here's what's not. So if you do read the book, read it with somebody else, be creative together and see what God does with it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, we really hope that there's just more conversations that come out of this, and that parents feel like they have permission to actually be countercultural a little bit, like still in the sport world, like we said, but be countercultural in the midst of it in a way that will help kids flourish and just bring a little more sanity back to your own life.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to put a link to the book in show notes so people can find it. I loved it. I think it's so helpful. It's a really useful and very much needed tool. So I truly do recommend that people go get a copy and read through it with someone else. I love that idea. And I think I'm probably going to have you guys back on to continue this conversation. Talk all about Sundays and all the things, because there's so much to talk about. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for just doing the work you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We're still trying to figure out.
Well, aren't we all? That's the
It's
thing
a
with
work in
parenting.
progress.
Yes. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I just really appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Steph.
Steph.
Christian parenting.